Buying a new house is about to get a whole lot harder. Let's have a talk about that. Lloyds Banking Group have put a proposal in the news, or at least a press release, that they're going to try and become the UK's biggest landlord. They've obviously been on YouTube, they've been watching those sort of influencers talking about property and how they've got 3,000 rental units and everything. Like, oh yeah, we want a piece of the pie. And I mean, fair enough, it's a good investment. But
So do I.
I'd say bricks and mortar, it's historically been a great asset to hold, and I think we'll both get there once we've got the assets or the financial backing to be able to do it.
Indeed.
Now, Liam and I had a look at this story, and we thought, oh, this is quite an interesting one to cover. There's quite a lot going on with it. It's definitely one that will affect us as people that are in the market for buying a house eventually. We're in the sort of age bracket where we're looking to move out and buy our own property, and
generation rent.
well, exactly. And the thing is, this is going to have a massive impact, not just on Lloyds themselves, but on the property market, because it's a huge amount of property demand. But some of the key headline figures that came out with the story. So what they're trying to do is buy 10,000 houses by 2025. Now, in these news articles, they're trying to focus on, well, they're not trying to, they are focusing on new build properties. So maybe you can get bulk discount from like Persimmons, Taylor Wimpey, that kind of thing. You don't know, obviously, what these big corporations are capable of doing. By 2030, they're trying to purchase 50,000 houses, which
is a lot of houses.
Amount. So what I did is I quickly just pulled a few numbers, and the average UK house price in the UK at the moment sits at £251,000. So if you take that 50,000 by 2030, that's a total investment of approximately 12.55 billion. For that price, you could almost buy Morrison's twice over. You can look at our previous video. So what we wanted to talk about was some of the effects that this was going to have on the housing market. Now, in the UK over the last 5 years, we've on average built 150,000 houses a year. Now, I know you said to me when we first started talking about it, you were like, oh, that's quite a lot of houses when we first did it. But at the current moment, that's not keeping up with the demand of new buyers currently coming into the market. I think there was a study done a while ago where they were saying we actually need to be building something like 300,000 new houses a year.
Where?
Well, this is exactly it. The UK is not that big. We're going to have to start sort of tearing up greenfield.
I mean, I've heard also that, to be fair, there's about 60% still greenery. So there is the space, but do we really want to ruin all of our lovely forests and greenbelt land, you know?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, by us, they're building 6,000 new houses on greenbelt land, and there was a huge petition that was signed by most of the people in our local area to try and stop that one happening. And they did reduce it from 10,000 down to 6,000, but you've got to have
4,000 houses. I mean, it's not like all they're going to do is they're going to have slightly bigger houses or slightly nicer gardens and build 6,000 on a plot that's actually made for 6,500. You know. Yeah. And it's just going to increase the price, which means that people like us in this generation rent and, well, what they're now calling generation buy, but there's not the support there to be able to afford those sorts of houses for a normal working person of our age.
Exactly. I mean, the prices have been going to the roof, and because we can't keep up demand, they will continue to go to the roof. And the problem with this, obviously, you've now got a big player in the market trying to buy up a huge amount of it. It's going to cause a liquidity crisis. It's going to get even worse. If that potentially is, this is one of the biggest effects it's going to be on the housing market. It's just the house prices are going to continue to go up, and you're going to continue to price people out of the market. I
really do wonder what the government think about this, because obviously they're trying to push this generation buy, trying to get people out of rental into buying houses. So I'm just wondering what their sort of viewpoint is on that, because that'd be really interesting to know, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a point I want to talk about a little bit later on, because there's a lot of things that could go wrong here legally. There's sort of competition laws and stuff they could be infringing on here. So although it's an announcement, I would not be surprised potentially if this gets blocked or regulated in some way in the future. So it's quite interesting. So looking at those numbers, at least by the 2025 to 2030 bracket, Lloyds will account for 1.8% buying of all new houses that are being built, which it doesn't sound a lot, but that's one party. And you think about it, okay, well, Lloyds look at it, potentially, let's say NatWest or another, or HSBC have a look at this and go, oh yeah, this is actually a good business model. I mean, when we look at the numbers later on, it is a good business model. Maybe we should start buying houses. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, your banks are buying 5 to 10% of the houses every year, and your individual buyers struggling.
I don't know about you, but I'd love to have 10,000 houses on the docket. You know.
It's part of my other portfolio. That's
I don't.
You'll never see it.
I don't think I'll ever have 10,000. Maybe a few. Let's hope. You know, hope for 10, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the biggest competition laws that I wanted to have, well, I don't know about competition laws, but what I thought would be an infringement on a competition clause is the fact that Lloyds Banking Group is the largest mortgage lender inside the UK. I think in 2018 they accounted for something like £43 billion worth of mortgages that were approved. Now, I'm talking hypotheticals here. I'm talking conspiracy theories, but one of the things I would suspect the government might ask them to set up is something called a Chinese wall. Have you ever heard of that at all?
No, never.
A Chinese wall is basically where you have a company, but it's got different sort of departments or functions, and there's a hard sort of barrier of information between the two, so you couldn't communicate between the two of them because of competition laws. Now, obviously, Lloyds being a banking group and doing these mortgages, let's say you're going to go buy a house in Pickford, let's say.
Yeah.
You go and you look at the house and you think, oh, yes, it's a great new build house. I'm going to go to this. Let's go to Lloyds Banking Group and get a mortgage. But on the side, Lloyds Banking Group have got Pickford housing area marked down as one of the ones that they're trying to buy property in. So you come in and ask for a mortgage and say, oh, yeah, I'm looking at this property. But because they're trying to target it, let's say they reject your mortgage.
Or put the rates up to make it the fact that you end up not being able to pay it back at some point, they can repossess it, can't they?
Potentially, exactly. I mean, yeah, that'd be even more up the conspiracy theory tree, but you're not wrong. So they've got all this extra data on what people are doing with their money and what people are doing with their mortgages, and they could use that to their advantage when trying to buy property. So you got to think as well in terms of actually picking areas where they want to buy property. They'll have a load of data on it from buy-to-let mortgage and stuff like that, where the most popular housing markets are. So they're going to have a huge advantage over that. Which is why I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if the government look at this and go, "Hang on, this isn't really fair.
Bit dodgy.
Let's enforce
let's
a
cap
Chinese
it, or
wall."
or put some sort of legislation or some sort of rule in place for them to stop them from effectively hustling people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even potentially talking even further down the tree, if it does get through, it could go to the stage where they force them to maybe go through a stock split, and you end up with Lloyds Banking Group property or Lloyds Property Group.
Would that then, as a split, do you think, be put under a REIT situation?
Potentially, yeah, absolutely, potentially. So
as it's currently part of the conglomerate, it'd probably be okay, right?
Yeah, so exactly it. So one of the conditions for a stock to be a REIT, I haven't read loads into it. One of the big conditions is that 75% of your annual profit has to come from property rent. Now, obviously, Lloyds Banking Group's massive, so the money they're going to make from this, it's not going to be nowhere near that 75%. But if they did split and you had to have Lloyds property, obviously, well, you're going to be in that threshold then, so why not make it a REIT? So we've had a look at the effects on the actual housing market. Being investors, though, we want to have a look at Lloyds. We want to look at, does this make Lloyds a better investment opportunity? Should we add it to our dividend portfolios? Getting into bricks and mortar, obviously, as a personal investor, is fantastic. So this is a way of being able to get some exposure to property for a lot less, because you don't have to come to Parliament, you don't have to do that. Now, one of the interesting things I noticed when this news article first came out is it didn't really have too much effect on the share price at the time. If anything, the share price actually fell slightly. Now, me being a speculator looking forward, I would have personally thought it would have had more of an effect, because this is a sort of buy the rumour, sell the news sort of opportunity you have from here. So it's definitely a story I'm going to keep my eye on and be following over the foreseeable future. Now, another point I wanted to talk about as well is that if you'd potentially been having a look and eye on it, you might have actually spotted something like this coming in the future, because in 2019 Lloyds Banking Group actually slashed their dividend. They cut it right back down, and they were only paying out about 1.8% dividend yield compared to like the 6%, 4% they were paying over the previous years. And you'll also notice that on their fiscal report, their cash balance increased up to £73 billion. Now, obviously, banks have to have a certain amount of cash balance to cover bank loans, and they have to hold 10% of their assets in physical cash in case there's loads of people trying to withdraw money. So you can do fractional reserve lending, but it's 10 to 1.
Right.
Now, of that 73 billion pounds, about 6 billion pounds in their last report was a surplus that they had available to them. So you'll notice that over the last couple of years, they've actually been building up their balance sheet. Now, this probably could have been in preparation for buying property, this becoming a thing, because obviously,
makes sense.
Trying to invest 12 billion, you need to have 12 billion to invest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure what the rules are on a bank going to a bank to get a loan to buy property, but I would have thought...
I think they do it all the time, don't they?
Yeah.
The government seems to do it enough.
Exactly. Just print more money.
Yeah.
So, in terms of an actual investment opportunity then for these properties, we ran a bit of the numbers and we just produced some theoretical values just based on the averages. So none of this is gospel, none of this is Bible. We don't know if Lloyds are looking at sort of 3 and 4 bedroom houses, or they're looking at 2 bedroom.
They could be buying flats.
Terraced houses. Yeah, we don't know the actual thing on here. So we just took the raw UK averages and ran a bit of numbers just as a hypothetical situation. So average UK rent in the UK is £1,000 a month, £1,007 if we're being accurate, but for a simple maths, we're just going to say it's £1,000 a month. So if we take our 50,000 houses that Lloyds are going to buy, we times it by 1,000, times that by 12 months, you get an annual rental yield of £600 million a year, which is significant.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Now you
I just want 10%, please.
Yeah, I'll have that. I'll take 0.5% of that.
Yeah.
But you think about that in terms of a company investment and company growth, adding £600 billion or £600 million a year increase to your revenue is great. It's fantastic. It's showing investment. It's what you want to see a company doing. So this is a big, in terms of me looking at it for Lloyds, it's a fantastic positive.
Yeah.
It's great the company's growing, but in terms of me looking at it as a person who's trying to get into property and buy houses myself, well, no thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to try and flip houses, and if they're buying up all the cheap ones, then what am I going to do?
It's now a love-hate relationship, if you know what I mean. I love holding Lloyds stock, but I hate Lloyds for buying the property.
I'm going to have to use them to get a mortgage, you know, and they're going to get they're going to get my money one way or the other, it seems. They hold my money now. It's my personal savings account. I'm with the Lloyds. Yeah. So one way or the other, they're having my money.
Exactly. Now, that's only half the coin, because obviously when you get into rental property, your return is based on not just your rental income, but also the increase in capital of the house when you're doing it. Now, average in the UK per year over the last 5 years, house prices have increased approximately 4%. Again, it's a rough average. We've just pulled some rough numbers just for simplicity. Now, you take their £12.5 billion investment, you times that by the 4% increase, that's another £502 million a year in capital returns on the property. So their balance sheet, or in terms of assets that they hold, will increase another £500 million a year, which will obviously increase the share price. Now, that gives you a total annual return of £1.1 billion, an ROI of 8.76%, which is fantastic. I mean, if we were looking at stocks and trying to buy a stock, if you were somebody who was offering you a 9% return on a fairly sound investment, you'd be like, yep, thank you very much. I'll add that to my dividend portfolio.
Straight in, please.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sort of like 8%. I mean, they're only earning about 3.9% from me in mortgage rates if I was to go for a mortgage with them. I think it's actually this year was 3.9% average. Mm-hmm. So they're actually going to be earning more money from these 50,000 houses. And how many people have mortgages with them right now? And it's been on a steady incline pretty much since 2013, 2014 as an average APR. So absolutely. Surely that's a massive conflict.
It almost is in a way, but you think about it in terms of they were earning 3.9% before, they've now got an opportunity to earn 8.76%. So theoretically they could be stealing business from themselves, but they're stealing business from themselves to be more profitable.
Yeah. As a business plan, brilliant, but how's that going to affect, us at the bottom end of this, waiting to try and find a house that's right for us, that's, the right price. It's going to affect us massively, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. And with the increase in house prices as well, you're now paying that 3.9% on an even larger sum of money. So theoretically, they're also actually gaining in that sense as well. So there's a huge amount of benefit that Lloyds are going to see from this at the expense of normal buyers. So, do
you think that if more banks were to do this, do you think that the average mortgage rate would skyrocket back to the 8% we saw, 25 years ago? Just to try and match that profit margin, whether someone rents from them or buys from them, they're still making big money.
I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so, because obviously interest rates are linked to the Bank of England base rate, which has been stuck at 0.5% for most of my adult memory, if you know what I mean. I mean, when I was a kid, you could go down to Halifax and you could open a child's bank account and it'd pay you 6.6% interest. I mean, I remember looking at it sort of 3 or 4 years ago and having sort of a substantial amount more money in the account, but earning less money than I was earning as a kid with just a small amount of money in the account.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what the interest is doing. Obviously, that's heavily linked to it. But yeah, you are absolutely right. Maybe this is an impact of that because the base rates have been so low for so long. Part of the reason why getting into property is now more profitable for the banks anyway. So
yeah, their increase in profits is just taking a tumble. They want to see the profits increase and not just the top line.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, looking at what you've done there, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it and look at Lloyds as a potential investment opportunity. I don't know what your opinions on it are.
I'll definitely be keeping my eye on Lloyds because I think they could be a potentially good investment for me. But the dividend is quite low, as you stated earlier. And yes, it'd probably be good as a capital gains sort of situation, but it's going to be a bit of the spur of the moment thing for me. If I was to invest in them, it'd be a case of, yes, I see potential in their growth, because I can't just hold hope that the dividend's going to get better, because it might not. They might keep it low forever now. You know, you can't say. It could skyrocket. We could be seeing 5-6% dividends come out of it, but it could be anywhere. It could drop to zero.
I mean, Hargreaves are actually predicting a forward-looking dividend of 5.1% for this year alone.
Right. Okay.
So
for this year.
This year, so they've announced the interim dividend of 0.67 pence a share, and if they do bring back a final dividend this year as well on top of it, it could turn into a fairly tasty investment. I mean, I don't actually hold any financial stocks currently at the moment. Obviously, being crypto-centric, long Bitcoin, short the banks is the mantra. But yeah,
sometimes though it's about making the right decision for your money and not. I know that you putting money into a bank would technically affect your crypto holdings, but
yeah, one way or another, it's more of the principle of it. Bitcoin is fighting the banking system. It's part of the reason behind it. So you're sort of becoming a hypocrite of yourself if you then go and invest in the bank anyway.
But at the end of the day, you're in this to make your millions and fund your future.
Absolutely.
So you got to do what's right for you. Maybe I don't even think it's immoral or anything. It's all about just making the money where you can in this sort of game. Yeah.
You got to have some morals in what you do, but this doesn't cross.
You wouldn't go and invest in a mining company that's booting people out the villages.
Exactly. There's certain stocks I've specifically avoided, even though they've been good investment opportunities, because I fundamentally don't agree with what's going on under the scenes with that company.
For me, I'm not investing in any oil companies because I believe that we need to move towards the renewables market.
Let's look at some of your comments.
Yes.
So
we always love your comments, guys. So keep them coming because they feed us with ideas and different just things we can bounce off.
Absolutely. Lee Smith came in with a comment on our last video looking at UK brokers, and he was saying he was using a broker called iWeb, and it's not one of the ones we actually addressed in that video. Quite a well-structured comment as well, because he seemed to get a good early entry fee into that broker when they were younger. Nowadays, you have to pay 4 times as much to actually get access to that broker.
Ooh.
But one of the interesting things he says there is actually the exchange fees are the worst out of all the ones we've seen at 1.5%. So if you're buying US stocks, you're paying an extra 1.5% on top of it.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing I like about his comment as well is he talks more about the fact he's buying funds and ETFs and stuff like that, not individual stocks. And that's a really good point actually, because a lot of the brokers actually have different funding structures for buying ETFs and for buying funds as opposed to normal brokers. So what might be the best broker for buying individual stocks and shares might not be the best broker for investing in funds. So different people have different investment styles. I mean, I personally enjoy looking into the stocks and looking into the companies, looking into the details, hence why we do this channel, hence why I invest in the way that I do. But that doesn't work for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have the time or the resource or the interest to be able to do that.
And you can chuck money into a fund and be on, hundreds of companies, and that's great.
Easily diverse. You just put the money in every month and you forget about it. Hopefully
it's basically copy portfolio in a way. We have our own hashtag. It's hashtag TPP Fund Your Future. If you do have any amazing posts you want us to see on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, just use that hashtag and we'll be sure to find them. Okay, so have a lovely week and thank you for joining us at the Portfolio Podcast.